For your entire life, you have been told a lie about who the Japanese people really are. The history books give you two ancestors, just two ancient peoples who met and merged and became a nation. That answer is printed in textbooks, repeated in museums, taught to every child for over 30 years. But scientists just read the complete genetic code of thousands of living Japanese people, and the DNA refused to agree. Hidden inside that code was a third ancestor, a bloodline no one counted, a vanished people the empire branded as barbarians, hunted across the mountains, and then quietly wiped from the records. They lost the war, but their blood survived it. Right now, it runs through millions of Japanese people who have no idea it's there. So who were these erased ancestors? Why did a proud nation work so hard to forget them? And what else has been buried in the one place no government can edit the human body itself? The answer waited 17 centuries to be found, and it is not the answer anyone wanted. To feel why this shook Japan, you have to understand the story it replaces. For 3 decades, one model ruled. Scholars called it the dual structure. Picture it as 2 rivers feeding one lake. The first river was the Jomon, islanders who lived in total isolation for 10,000 years, sealed off from the world by the sea. The second was the Yayoi, rice farmers who sailed in from the mainland and slowly blended their lives with the people already here. 2 sources, 1 people. It was tidy, it was teachable, and it carried a quiet pride underneath it. The belief that Japan was a single, unmixed bloodline found nowhere else on Earth. There was just one thing this neat picture could never explain: the far north. Up in the cold mountains, the ground held evidence that did not fit. Old war chronicles, strange tombs, a memory of someone the official story had no slot for. Generations of researchers saw the crack and stepped around it, because proving it meant interrogating the dead, and the dead don't speak. For a long time, that crack just sat there, waiting. Start where the lie is thinnest, the northeast. Centuries ago, this land answered to no emperor. It belonged to a people the southern court called the Emishi, and the word dripped with contempt. To the rulers building their palaces in the south, these northerners were savages who refused to kneel. They were also terrifying. As the south crowned kings and wrote laws, the Emishi commanded the highlands with horseback archers and ambush tactics that shattered every army sent to tame them. For generation after generation, the empire could not break them. From that long war, one name still cuts through the silence: Aterui. Around the year 789, this chieftain met a vast imperial force, sent north to end his people, and he annihilated it. It was not a lucky skirmish. It was a public humiliation of the strongest power in the region. The court had to pour in fresh waves of troops for years before Aterui was finally surrounded, talked into surrender, and put to death in the year 802. Then came the strangest move of all. The victors didn't just defeat the Emishi, they dissolved them, renamed, absorbed, scrubbed from the lessons that followed, until it seemed no such people had ever drawn breath. You can erase a name from a book. The scientists were betting you cannot erase it from a cell. What made this hunt different was the method, and the method was a revolution. Old research leaned on bones, a jaw recovered in 1 decade, a skull in another, separated by huge silences in time. Reading Japan's origins that way was like reconstructing a war from 3 torn photographs. So the team threw out the broken approach and chose a living archive instead. Rather than excavate the dead, they would decode the people walking around today. They collected the full genome, every strand of inherited instruction, from more than 3,000 individuals stretched across every climate the country holds. Snowbound Hokkaido in the north, the subtropical Ryukyu Islands in the south, and everything between. And they refused the shortcuts older studies took. Instead of sampling scattered fragments, they read nearly all 3 billion chemical letters that spell out a human being. An ocean of detail no previous look at this population had ever touched. Their target was precise: rare mutations, the kind of microscopic flaw that surfaces in only one ancestral group, behaving like a fingerprint pressed into glass. Spot that mark in someone alive now, and you have traced their origin backward through time. When the computers finished sorting it, the expected pattern collapsed. The population would not divide cleanly in half. It divided in three. The textbook promised a pair. The genome delivered a trio. Two of the three were familiar. There sat the Jomon, the deep island route, precisely where everyone predicted. And there was a current flowing in from continental East Asia, tied tightly to populations on the Chinese mainland, sweeping in from the western shores. But wedged between them, pulsed a signal the old map had no coordinates for. A distinct northern lineage descending out of Northeast Asia, its closest known relatives a vanished Korean kingdom from roughly the 4th and 5th centuries, and it pooled, unmistakably, in a single corner of the country, the Northeast, Atarui's country. The buried war snapped into focus. The barbarians the throne had tried to delete were no footnote and no foreign intruder. They were a load-bearing pillar of the Japanese people. Then the code revealed how visibly this still marks the nation, like sediment showing the path of an ancient flood. Down in southern Okinawa, the primeval island blood beats loudest, close to 29 in every 100. Across the northern homeland of the Emishi, that same archaic share settles near 19, but pushed toward the old imperial heartland in the west, and it thins to barely 13, overtaken there by the mainland current. Sit with what that reveals. Modern Japan is a living fossil of its own migrations. Each region silently confesses which ancestor shaped it most. The truth was never a duet finishing as a solo. It was three streams, merging at uneven speeds, and never fully dissolving into one. A doubter could wave all this away as statistics. Clever math, nothing solid. So the researchers reached for evidence carved into flesh. It surfaced through illness. Threaded through the data were two inherited mutations, and the way each one spread across the islands retold the entire saga without a single number from the ancestry charts. The first clustered in the east, hugging the old Emishi territory, and appeared almost nowhere else on the planet, a homegrown northern flaw, seeping westward over centuries. The second concentrated in the west, and it did not respect the coastline. The identical defect appears in China and Korea. A passport stamp left by the mainland newcomers. Two diseases, two separate gateways into Japan, recorded not in any chronicle a king could censor, but in the cells of his descendants. The discoveries kept deepening. Sunk inside the genome lay dozens of fragments older than every chapter of this story, inheritances from human species that no longer exist, Neanderthals, and the shadowy Denisovans, extinct relatives still steering how Japanese bodies fight sickness in the present day. Theory was finished. This was confirmation you could weigh. Skeletons invite argument and tombs keep their secrets, but 3,000 living codes all aiming at the same conclusion leave no room to look away. The schoolbook hadn't merely skipped a detail, it had lost a founding people. One riddle still smouldered. If 3 ancestors built this nation, why did the lessons stubbornly insist on 2? The reason is uncomfortable, and it exposes why the truth stayed buried so long. That third surge did not slip in during some misty prehistoric dawn. It landed inside written history, about 17 centuries ago, in the era of the warrior kings. This was when Japan piled up burial mounds so colossal they stand beside Egypt's pyramids, keyhole giants of packed earth, running longer than 4 football fields, raised to honor god rulers whose names still command awe. It was the hinge moment when the islands were remade. Script appeared, codified law appeared, a loose patchwork of chieftains fused into one empire with startling speed. Tradition flattered itself that Japan simply matured on its own genius. The genome tells a harder truth. That sudden surge of sophistication arrived, carried on a flood of mainland migrants, fresh people, foreign knowledge, imported authority. The engine that forged an empire was shipped in from elsewhere. And that is precisely the confession a nation obsessed with its own purity cannot bear to print. So the third ancestor was folded discreetly into the background. The northern rebels were rubbed out, and the great mainland arrival was repainted as something that had simply always belonged. 2 became the safe answer, not because the count was honest, but because pride is easier than accuracy. The genetic record just shredded that comfort. So here, at last, is what the science hands back to us. After the chronicles, the burial fields, the silenced rebellion, and 3 billion decoded letters, purity was always a myth. The Japanese are the inheritance of 3. The Jomon, who endured alone through 100 centuries. The northern Emishi line, the savages a throne tried to delete from existence. And the mainland tide that swept in beside the kings and raised an empire on strength it did not invent. 3 peoples, 3 crossings, the forager, the planter, and the conqueror, all braided into nearly every Japanese person breathing today, mixed in proportions decided by the very soil beneath their birthplace. And here lies the wound that should never close. The ancestor the empire fought hardest to annihilate, the rebels, Aterui, and the warriors who died spitting at imperial power, did not vanish into defeat. Their blood outlasted the very throne that hunted them. It pulses on, inside the descendants of the people who once spat the word barbarian at them. For 30 years the lesson said 2. The genome unsealed the grave, recounted the dead, and answered 3. This is the thought that refuses to let go. If a country that staked its whole identity on being one unbroken people can misjudge its own beginnings by an entire founding ancestor, how many other nations are soothing themselves with the same flattering fiction? We say the winners write history, but every human being writes their genome. The victor and the vanquished, the enthroned and the erased, the celebrated and the forgotten, all leave the same kind of evidence. And that evidence cannot be bribed. It keeps no allegiances and spares no egos. Japan did not lose part of itself in this revelation. It recovered a deeper, harder, more honest self, an identity not minted from purity, but hammered out of survival, collision, and one deleted people's stubborn refusal to be fully forgotten. The textbook handed down 2. The buried, and the living code that carries them, returned the 3rd. History silenced the Emishi once. 17 centuries later, the record sealed inside human DNA is finally speaking for them again. If this changed how you see what's hidden beneath the surface, leave a like and subscribe to stay for the next secret the Earth surrenders. Until the next discovery, keep your eyes on the past. It has not finished talking.